India is the fifth largest contributor to cervical cancer deaths in the world. We have a lot of women turn back and say that I'm not using these painkillers because they can result in infertility and other problems, when that's actually not true at all. Indian women hit perimenopause, which is the stage before menopause, much earlier. Most of our medical textbooks and medical learning is actually geared towards men. Women in their 50s and 60s in India, especially if you've had a predominantly vegetarian diet, get your bone density scan. Sexually active women must get STI tests done every 6 months. Physiotherapy needs to be prioritized. I'm not gonna lie, age does affect fertility.
Hi Divya, welcome to the Good Life Guide.
Hi Biral, pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to have you on the podcast. So today, the topic that we'll be focusing on is women's health, because that's something that you also work in and you also specialize in. Many of the women's health issues often go overlooked, right? What
Yeah.
are some of the common myths and misconceptions surrounding women's health?
So I think you really hit upon a very, very important topic, which is that we don't, as women, like we just inherently don't prioritize our health. And that's so sad. I feel like we have grown up in environments where we have seen our mothers take care of all the family members and the husbands, the children, even the pets before they themselves would go to a doctor. And this has resulted in so many horrible things, right? Like issues that could have been diagnosed and detected and treated early, not happening. Things like more preventative healthcare focus has not been there. It's been super reactive and super last minute. And I think we now sort of owe it to ourselves to be a bit more educated about our health. And here are some of the myths and misconceptions that we hear very often, especially in gynecological care, right? I think the first big thing is actually about the usage of painkillers for your periods. So a lot of women do suffer from debilitating period pain, and based on the analysis, right, very based on your history, your symptoms, your medical conditions, everything, sometimes the doctors may choose to prescribe painkillers. We have a lot of women turn back and say that I'm not using these painkillers because they can result in infertility and other problems, when that's actually not true at all. There's no evidence linking it to infertility. But managing your pain and using a painkiller for now, and then understanding what's going wrong, right? What about your hormonal balance, or what about your diet, what about your inflammation levels actually going wrong, for us to be able to really address it does require certain management techniques. So this is one huge myth. The second thing is, the minute a person's periods are delayed, it's so quick today to say that, okay, you have PCOS. PCOS has become this buzzword. Like the women coming to Pinky Promise who've already diagnosed themselves as having PCOS. Because it's so common, like every other woman that we know has it, right? It's like, I have PCOS, I have PCOD, I have PCOS, I have PCOD. It's both the same things, by the way. There's no difference between the two. But this is something that is happening often. And so I think one of the biggest myths is that it's to do with your obesity levels. It is related to weight, but very often people who look like completely normal BMI can also have PCOS, because it's actually associated with your insulin resistance, which is something that's inside you. Secondly, a lot of women feel like, I have hair fall, acne and all that, but I don't have PCOS because my periods are regular. That's the third myth, which is that very often when you have PCOS also, your periods can be regular, but that doesn't mean you don't have PCOS. And the fourth myth is, a lot of people say my periods are irregular, so I have PCOS. But the truth is, the irregularity could be due to so many other reasons, and PCOS is only one of them. So you really need to talk to a doctor and get it all sorted off. And these are some very common myths that we hear.
Right. I mean, some of these even I didn't know. So
I'm
it's
glad.
great because yeah, there is a lot of misinformation out there also. So what are, according to you, the top three unique health challenges that women face, and how do they stand out?
So, do you know? I think one of the most unique challenges that women face is associated with hormonal health. This is like, we need to understand that for women, compared to men, right, based on your life stage, based on how many children you have, are you pregnant right now? Are you breastfeeding? Have you ever had a pregnancy before? Also, are you in your 40s, your 30s? Your hormonal health and the symptoms that you get as a result of that changes so much, but we just don't realize it. In your early years, it manifests in the form of like acne, and skin issues and things like that, because you've hit puberty but you're not yet out of it, right? Later on, for example, women who are Indian women hit perimenopause, which is the stage before menopause, much earlier. Like that's just a genetic thing, and we don't know about this often. So women will start experiencing mood swings, hot flashes, sleeplessness, anxiety, and vaginal dryness, and these kind of symptoms much ahead, right? It's like your periods are coming, but all sorts of other things are happening because of the differences in hormonal fluctuations that are very, very common. As women hit their 30s, especially with stress levels, also, there can be changes to your hormonal balance. And so, like knowing what to eat when, things like, seed cycling, things like low inflammatory foods, all of those things. Like some women, for example, don't do well with dairy, and that actually affects the hormonal balance. Understanding those things and actually taking care of that is a very, very important thing. That's a very important element. Based on your life stage, you really need to understand what's going on with your hormones and what's the right thing to do to maximize on all sorts of things like your heart health, your bone health, your risk for diabetes. All of those things are related. I think the second thing, and it's interesting, I also myself realized this when my mother was going through it. Women in their 50s and 60s in India, especially if you've had a predominantly vegetarian diet, get your bone density scan done. It's so important. We don't talk about it. And I can see you reacting to it because you clearly have some thoughts about it. But you need to get your bone density scan done. Women are, in fact, significantly more predisposed to autoimmune conditions compared to men. In fact, issues like multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis like osteoporosis, every other auntie we know has osteoporosis, rheumatoid arthritis, all these things, right? There are blood markers and other markers which actually help to determine your risk for different autoimmune conditions. Knowing this helps you manage them early, but no one talks about that because most of our medical textbooks and medical learning is actually geared towards men. Even AI that we build is geared towards men. So at Pinky Promise, our AI is very, very deterministic. It's very determinate that it's going to be geared towards women. We're building technology for women, but medicine and everything, they look at women as smaller men. But that's not true. Our anatomies, our bodies, the way that we react to things, the dosages of medicines also, and eventually the kind of issues that we have are very, very different. So these are two very important things I think that women need to take care of based on their life stage and should not ignore.
Definitely. I mean, like you said, right? In any kind of field, most of the things are geared towards men. So it's great that Pinky Promise, because physically also men and women are so different. So the needs are different, the issues are different. And this is just like common sense, to be very honest. But
I think, Dheeraj, something that I totally forgot to mention is the pap smear.
yeah.
Getting it done every once in 2 years is so important. 93% of cervical cancers can be prevented if they are treated early or detected early. Like the prognosis is excellent. Like the treatment mechanisms, the options available for treating cervical cancer, precancerous cells in that region, the prognosis is excellent. But early detection is important. No one is told this, I'm a woman in my 30s and I have a very good gynecologist and I am in Pinky Promise. So it's like I have the care that I need. None of my friends knew about it. And we're very well educated women and we ourselves didn't know कि 2 साल में pap smear करना चाहिए. These things are important and not talked about. So I'm glad we're having this discussion.
Right, definitely. And coming to cervical cancer, which was kind of my next question. Earlier this year, Poonam Pandey did this whole campaign where she staged her death. And, that I don't want to give an opinion on how that was and stuff like that, but that did gear a lot of attention to cervical cancer. There were a lot of conversations that opened up about cervical cancer. Uh, like you also said, right? Many women, even your peers, are not aware about these things. Do
Yeah.
you think India as a society needs these drastic measures to create awareness and spread awareness about women health?
So, I don't want to comment on the thing what was done. But my concern is that while there was some awareness that was created, it is such an episodic thing, to say that, like, okay, I've died from cervical cancer, and then, oh, just kidding, I'm back, but I need you to know about cervical cancer. It There were so many women who have died from cervical cancer. India is the fifth largest contributor to cervical cancer deaths in the world. There's so many women who have died out of cervical cancer. So it's not a joke. You can't make a joke out of something so serious. So I personally felt that was one thing. The second thing is that, see, it's so episodic that when it happened, it's like, wow, okay, we have to talk about it. Um, but in fact, what is required for policy change to happen and for awareness to happen and for people to really understand the importance of good approaches towards treating and combating cervical cancer is sustained action. Um, Unfortunately, this incident may have rubbed people the wrong way also, right? Like, as many people who could have been like, okay, this is an important issue, many would have been like, this is frivolous. Like, the kind of behavior that has happened is so frivolous that chal chodo yaar, kaun karega ye sab? Especially like, and men being brought into the care of women in the household is also very important. So we need to understand the impact that something like this has on all genders, and proceed accordingly. I do believe that Indian public health system is one of the best in the world. Our vaccination programs, our immunization programs, and our like coverage is actually one of the best in the world. The way that we worked to eliminate polio is an excellent example. Like, we made this country polio free. Like, our frontline workers went to every immigrant camp, went to like temporary islands, riverine islands in the northeast. They did all sorts of things to make sure that people got that polio ka tika. So Indian government is actually very well equipped to also take on cervical cancer as a big challenge, and it is doing that. So the Serum Institute of India has come up with a cervical cancer vaccine, which is literally like 1/10 the price, not even 1/10, less than 1/10, 1/20th the price of the Merck cervical vaccine, which is otherwise like between 4,000 to 9,000 rupees, which is highly, and you have to take 3 doses or 2 doses based on your age. That's really expensive, right? Like, which Indian can afford it? But with the Serum Institute of India's vaccine, you can actually, it's very, very affordable, and it can be mainstreamed in schools. It can be mainstreamed in colleges. It can be something that any doctor gives as a part of that vaccination schedule. And the government has created a vaccination schedule saying that, this is at different ages, here are the different vaccines that need to happen. And this is something that Pinky Promise is very interested in doing. And we've started working towards this actually in terms of how do you mainstream care for cervical cancer, which is so preventable. And number two, how do you mainstream pap smears, right? Like, can it be that like every woman post her delivery is educated about a pap smear? And then, because institutional deliveries now, the Indian government has made such a push that institutional deliveries are happening at a high rate. So, is there a way for us to then work with a woman who's already entered the hospital system to then enable her to come back for a cervical cancer screening? There have been amazing stories of how the Indian government, Indian public healthcare systems, and Indian doctors have worked together to achieve really large objectives, such big objectives. And cervical cancer should be one of them, and I'm sure it will be as well.
No, definitely. What you said, I think it wasn't even a conversation till like a couple of years back. Like no one even
Yeah,
knew what cervical cancer was, or something like this existed. Of course, healthcare professionals did, but amongst the common public,
yeah,
the only kind of cancer that was spoken in terms of women's health was breast cancer. And
correct, correct.
other things were not that spoken about. So coming to specifically women's health, companies like Swiggy, Zomato, Byju's have started offering paid period leaves. Now, while it allows women to, take rest in a difficult time, it also becomes grounds for unintended judgment, right? How do you view this? And do you think India is ready for a policy like this?
It's interesting. I actually had the opportunity to speak to ET on this topic. And what I said, and I maintain it big time, what I said is that women are actually now, we're really paving way for change. We women are entering the workforce and in such hordes and drives that I, as an employer, like as a startup owner, I want the best talent, right? And so the market always works on incentives. It works on financial and monetary incentives. And there are small things that you can do in terms of your benefits package, which actually enables greater retention and greater attraction of women. And so even if somebody just didn't believe in period leave and like didn't care about it, right? This is a big motivation to care. I feel like the naysayers just don't get it. Like they don't get it that like if you don't offer these things, the best of employees, the best of your teammates are not going to come and work with you. They're going to come and work with an organization that has it. And if you don't offer these benefits, you're also going to cry about maternity leave. You're going to cause issues for everything else. I don't think the naysayers understand that. I think the second aspect that I really think about is what is the harm, right? Like, what are you losing in one day? In fact, if a woman comes to work with terrible period pain, she's not going to be productive. She's going to be forced to sit there and she's going to do subpar work. Our workspaces, our policies at workspaces were never geared towards women. But now with hordes of women entering the labor workforce, we need to start ensuring that offices and HR are also equipped to deal with the issues of women in a nice way. And this is one of those things, right? Like, why would you want to trouble a woman who is so unwell to come to your office and just work? It's ridiculous. So to be able to stay at home boosts her productivity, boosts her happiness, and boosts her long-term retention in your organization. And I don't understand why people don't see it that way. But I also want to say one thing, right? That having debilitating period pain is not okay. I think that organizations giving period leave are only addressing one component of it. The second component is why is that even happening? And medically, as well as lifestyle wise, there are lots of changes that can be done in order to enable a woman to actually not go through that amount of pain. Healthy period where there's some amount of cramping, but it's not debilitating. There's so many underlying issues that need to be probed. And that's what we do at Pinky Promise. So, of course, like at Pinky Promise, we have no cap on sick leaves and we allow for paid menstrual leave. But at the same time, for people coming into Pinky Promise who complain of like period pain, we look at everything to try and understand why that's happening. Is it endometriosis? Is it fibroids? Is it associated with like inflammatory foods that you're taking? Is it a nutritional condition? What's really going on? Are there micronutrients that are completely off balance out there, which is causing this? What's really going on that's actually resulting in so much unbearable period pain? That is the second step. And I think all organizations now need to do this because even the health insurance, so to speak, is not geared towards employee productivity and happiness. It's just there as like and you know, you guys would be interested in this, but the insurance is there as a fallback. It's not there as a motivator, right? So that's something that I've been sort of pretty vocal about.
Yeah, it does. It does add a bit of motivation for women to be like, okay, I am seen in this kind of place. I just wanted to know in a couple of lines, what is Pinky Promise and why did you start it?
Pinky Promise is an instant clinic for women's sexual and reproductive health. So you can think about it as a gynecologist on your phone who's there for you instantly and 24/7 to solve all your questions. And the way that it works actually is if you have any sexual or reproductive health issue, you come to Pinky Promise, you click on a simple button, you start having a conversation with a gynecologist where you start describing your symptoms, your medical history, everything. And this conversation is assisted by our technology to make sure that there's no question that's missed out, no issue that's not been analyzed, nothing, right? And in a few minutes after you have that conversation with the gynecologist, she's able to actually advise you on the right course of care, be it medicines that you need to take or certain lifestyle things that you need to follow, whatever it is. She's able to immediately turn around and give you that advice. And based on sort of your medical history and all the information that we know about you, our software has actually done a great job thoroughly analyzing, like, you know, what medicine should be given, what shouldn't be given, what could be the diagnosis, everything, and start suggesting that to the doctor, which helps her to make quick decisions. And even after you get your prescription, you can continue to chat for free with the doctor for 24 hours to ask all your questions, all your follow-up questions. You know, if you have, for example, you need to book tests, you can do that also on our app. So it's basically a one-stop shop for all gynecological issues for women. And the best part is that it starts at just 99 rupees. and it's 24/7. So any time of the day or night, you don't need to put off your health. You can just come to our platform and take care of it in the easiest manner.
That's absolutely great because there is a need for such an app and for such a team to be there for women's health. And Divya, that brings me to my next question. For working women in tier one, that the market that we are addressing right now, what are some practical tips for self-care, stress management, and mindfulness for overall well-being?
I think that understanding, like, I feel like mental health is something that we don't prioritize, especially if you're on the go. A lot of working women also have families to take care of, also have children. It's like a whole, like, it's like you just don't have time for yourself. But I think, and prioritizing your mental health and having some time for yourself where you exercise in something that enables your health. It could be meditation, yoga, exercise, running, something in the morning. Um, is such a powerful start. Like, that's something that I personally, as a CEO of a startup and as a mother of two children, that's something that I just don't give up on. Like, every morning to wake up to like go on a run or workout is so important for me, and it gives me a healthy start to my day. I think the second element is to also be mindful of foods. I used to work in management consulting, which is a very like high powered, high, stress environment where you're also sort of traveling a lot. So you just eat what's available, right? Which does affect your hormonal health. It affects everything eventually. So to be like mindful about it, and also like push your employers to see if there can be healthy swaps and healthy options available in your cafeteria, healthy meal options, or like a vending machine that actually has like good snacks and like things that are like nuts and seeds and stuff to munch on. I think that. And the third thing that I would really, really like talk about is taking time away from your screen as a working professional. It's we just don't realize how addicted we are to it. And the first time I did it, I was struggling. I was like trying to go back to my screen every time. I'm
Yeah,
so
it's
ashamed to
just we shift from one screen to another screen. If it's not the laptop, it's the mobile. If it's not the mobile, it's the TV. It's just some form of digital screen in front of us at all times.
do that digital detox is so amazing for productivity.
Yeah.
Um, So I have like I have some other colleagues who are also startup founders who don't go to bed with their phones. They
Mm.
have an alarm by their desk, and they swear by how amazing that is.
Wow.
It's been something that's been hard for me to implement, but the days that I do that, it's
Mm.
actually really good. Um, so like your dopamine release is a lot more controlled when you do it that way.
Okay. Okay, great. So I wanted to ask you this question. What is one pinky promise that you've made to yourself to prioritize your health?
Yeah, so I actually just talked about it.
Yeah, you did, and I thought
I
it was a great
yeah, yeah.
segue to
So
just.
I think the pinky promise that I made to myself to prioritize my health is no matter what happens, every day in the morning, I am going to work out. I'm going to take that time for myself. I'm going to sleep on time, wake up on time, and actually work out. No kid, no office call, nothing at that time, right? And it's so hard, especially in when you're running your own company. You want to wake up and you want to be like, what's going on? But just to like resist that temptation for an hour has been helpful for me, and that is my pinky promise. I have to keep doing it every day.
Yeah, and I feel that it's always top down. So whatever the upper management kind of does, that like rubs off on the employees. So if you are in a good mood, if you begin your morning in a good way, then your employees are also bound to feel happy when they come to work and not stressed about, acha, what's gonna happen today. So it's great that you do. So talking about proactive care, Divya, you did speak about pap smears and you did speak about bone density tests. What are the essential screenings and tests that women should do? If you could just list down a few tests that.
Yeah, so I think women must get sexually active women must get STI tests done every 6 months. It's not a taboo topic. It's just important to understand that is an important part of your health and get that done. Pap smears every 2 years. If you are young, below the age of say 25 or even older. Actually, now that age cap for cervical cancer vaccine has been removed. So if you think that you want the cervical cancer vaccine, talk to your doctor about it and get it done. The fourth thing that I would say is breast self-examination. There's mixed evidence in terms of whether that actually works to detect breast cancer or not. But what it does is bring about breast awareness so that when something is actually different, you are able to understand it and go to a doctor accordingly. So breast self exams are very important. You can do it once a month. You can do it choose to do it 4 days after your periods so that there can be changes to the tissue anatomy at that time. So you want to wait for that to go and then do it early on in the cycle. But get to understand what that's like. I would also say an annual preventative health checkup with your gynecologist is important. Like even if there's no problem, going every year to your doctor to say, hi doctor, like I just want to get everything checked is important. I also think that you're getting your vitamin levels checked and your blood sugar levels checked is important. I get my vitamin D levels, my vitamin B levels, and my calcium levels and all that checked on a bi-yearly basis so that I can supplement accordingly. I think that India, we're privileged enough to have good pathology testing facilities available at our doorstep. That's not available in any other country. So we must make benefit of it. These are the basic ones, I think. Not able to think of anything else, but I'll come around if I've missed something.
Yeah, what about the HPV vaccine?
So I just spoke about the cervical cancer
Right.
HPV vaccine.
That's
So it's
right.
not the cervical cancer vaccine. HPV is like a large family of viruses. And out of that, some of those strains can cause cervical cancer. What I was saying is that, see, there used to be an age cap for it. The Center for Disease Control in the United States had an age cap for the HPV vaccine. Which was very clear that 24, 25, then they revised it upwards. And then they said that, you know what, it actually is based on your sexual history and your exposure. Because the more sexual history you have, the more you are actually exposed to the virus because it's such a prevalent virus. After a point, it may not make sense for you to just get the vaccine. It may make sense for you to just get pap smears. But that is something that your doctor can determine. And so you either need 2 shots or 3 shots based on your age. And the doctor can determine your dosage as well. There are very good protocols out there for it. So if anyone is interested in getting the getting the HPV vaccine, it's a very, very useful one. You should really talk to your doctor about it.
Got it, got it. So as women age, like you said, you got to know about bone health density when your mom kind of aged. And what are some of the lesser known issues that women face? So we know that at 30 you need to start multivitamins, right? So that's when you kind of get those tests done regularly and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So not just 30, but beyond 50, beyond 60, what are some of the issues that women face that, people are not aware of?
So I think one thing, even before 50, a lot of women just don't understand that menopause is something that they're hitting. So I really want to talk about that. I think that it's one of the most poorly understood things in women's health. And so they feel like, okay, you know what, this is something that I kind of have to just deal with. And it's a lot, right? Like you're just going through a massive hormonal shift, something that you are getting every month, your periods, which is like a part of your identity as a woman, just suddenly will change and stop eventually. And it's a 10-year journey. So I think to understand when someone is hitting perimenopause, go through that process and to know that there are medical options available, right? Like there's a lot of management that can happen in the form of nutrition and lifestyle and sleep and stuff like that. But there's also hormone replacement therapy. And that's a possibility. So for women to know that that is a thing and to know that you can get help and to seek it is something that I'm really shocked and surprised by how few people know that. At Pinky Promise, we focus a lot on younger women, and because they're digitally native, right? They're digitally savvy and they go and they use the app. They consult for their mothers. They actually get better, they trust our platform, and then they say, my mother is having this problem. She's having really irregular periods. Can you help? And it's been happening for like 1 year. And we're like, oh no, like she's just been going through this for a whole year without support. Like, and she's a married woman, she's given birth. There's no taboo, right? Like you can just go to a gynecologist. A lot of younger women are gonna have that taboo, like, log kya sochenge? That's not there for married women. But she's still not going to a gynecologist, which is like so sad. I think that's one thing. And I think as you get older, I did mention the bone density test and stuff like that. But it's important to ensure that you're taking the right supplements based on your blood, like what your blood levels actually have to say. And I don't think that we have the ability to do that. Nutrition needs to be more personalized, more precise. And it can't be like a one size fits all, take this like 60 plus multivitamin or 50 plus multivitamin. It does have, so it's important to figure out what nutrition you need and supplement accordingly. Bone density tests are actually very important. So I think talking to your GP or orthoped to see at what point you have to get it done. Regular breast cancer mammograms after the age of 45 are also very important. Cannot be ignored. And the frequency will be determined by the doctor because it's a heavy dose of X-ray. So, it's not something to take lightly, but it's also very important. So what is the right frequency? Something the doctor will determine. And I think a last thing for women in their 60s, it's ridiculous, but I feel like physiotherapy needs to be prioritized.
Okay.
We don't talk about that often, but ensuring that your mobility, your joint strength, your musculature, all of that is good is something that physiotherapists can really help you with. And so as you go from 60 to 70 to 80, you can have insanely good muscle tone, insanely good joint health, insanely good mobility. You don't need to lose that. Your spinal alignment, all of that. It can be very good if you start prioritizing physiotherapy early. So I think that's like I keep telling my mom to do it, and she's now started prioritizing her physiotherapy, and the benefits are just like you can see them in a month. So I would, if you have access to a good physiotherapist, you have the ability to afford one, it's important to really go there.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny that you mentioned this because physiotherapy is not something that people look at as a proactive thing.
Proactive.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's not something like, okay, this is exercise or this is good for my bones or for my muscles, but it's always like, oh, agar meko ye issue hua, then I will go to physiotherapist. So it's not something that people, and it's really nice that you've mentioned it.
Yeah, I think the reason that I mentioned it now is because a lot of women who are older in India, they don't have a history of exercise. This whole gym culture, working out, running, all that has come later, right? As we women have, in our generation, it's very common. In fact, not so common in tier 2, tier 3, but it's common amongst the city dwelling women. And now it's becoming more and more common. And so to take to exercise suddenly, the number of women I have spoken to who say things like, I just started, like I'm in my 60s, मैंने walking चालू की थी, मैंने 3 महीने अच्छे से किया था, फिर मेरा ankle मुड़ गया. It's because the muscles have not been built out, right? They're not developed. They're not ready to take on more exercises. Your core strength is probably not good. Your mobility is probably not good. And so to do like the right kind of, and so you go to a gym and someone who doesn't know the difference between the body of a 50-year-old and the body of a 20-year-old is going to ask you to lift weights and do resistance training and things like that. So you actually need to go to someone who understands musculature, who understands your physiology and can actually work with you, which is why it's important to do it.
Yeah, definitely. You did speak about menopause briefly, and we know that mental issues or mental complications or mental health is also very much affected during menopause. And mental health is also very closely related to reproductive health, right? How do you see an AI-based app benefiting women in managing these conditions, like say postpartum depression or menopause or PMDD? How do you see women?
I think that the way that we're thinking about it at Pinky Promise, and this is early conversations for us because we've started doing more management of conditions that are a little bit easier to tackle, right? Like infertility or polycystic ovaries, where what we've built is a system where you as a patient are on like literally like a group chat with a gynecologist and a nutritionist, right? You've given us some information that we need to be able to like categorize you, diagnose you, build your diet plans and things like that. And so you have a prescription, you have a care plan, you have all this that our softwares enable you to get quickly. And then everything that you do after that, right? Like what do you eat? What are your doubts? Ki like ye tel lena chahiye, wo karna chahiye. Today I just wasn't feeling it, so I didn't move. All of that is tracked and understood. And it's not like you're reporting separately to separate people. It's like it's all on that chat between you and your nutrition and your gynecologist, so that we can manage everything with you in mind. What we have noticed is that fragmented information is actually the biggest challenge, right? Like if I go to a clinic, I'm told कि आपको PCOS है, आप weight lose कर लो. Great. So then I go and I work with a nutritionist who doesn't know much about weight loss with hormonal conditions, right? Or I don't do anything. I just go on a random diet. And then nothing changes. I don't feel better. I don't improve. I don't go back to the doctor also. Whereas, and the doctors are too busy. They are not going to sit and tell you that like, you change this, you change that, ab ye mat khao, tell me what is in your kitchen. Like they don't have the time to do that, right? They rely on someone who's an expert in that to do it and for them to then manage your health. So we've put all that together in a group chat with AI, actually giving insights to the doctors and insights to the nutritionists so that your responses are real time, right? Like aapne ek photo khicha, your nutritionist is immediately going to tell you the protein content is low. What are you doing? Because our system is actually figuring that out and telling her कि इसमें protein low है, इनका blood sugar spike हो जाएगा. So those kind of things, right? Like that's how we've started it. But the way that we want to go is add a therapist to the loop as well. Mental health is so expensive and there are hardly any therapists in India. Like even I hesitate before going to a therapist because I see the bill and I'm like, ye kyun dena hai mujhe? So, and so older women, it's going to be very hard, especially for menopausal women where mental health is not normalized for you to do that. But if you come to a doctor and the doctor itself is seamlessly taking you on a group chat with a nutritionist and a therapist, and everything is tracked, including how you're feeling. And if you need, you can fix an appointment with a therapist and talk about it. I feel like that's a very nice way to manage your health. PMDD also, like a lot of PMDD is, so when you talk to a therapist in isolation, a nutritionist in isolation, and a doctor in isolation, it's not going to work out. We need to understand that a lot of women's health conditions require integrated care management. And that's exactly what we're building out for these kind of issues. Like at Pinky Promise, it's like, very affordable rates because our doctors can take care of so many more patients thanks to our technology. So we can really reduce your price, right? Like we can literally make it like 1,000 rupees a month and stuff like that. You get on a chat with them and they personalize their care to you and they help you. A lot of the problems with a lot of the AI assisted apps that are there today is they don't think about integrated care management. And we want to be able to do that. So we're actually building that out right now.
Yeah, it's great because they will kind of get everything in one place. So that's really amazing. Okay, so you did speak about fertility also briefly. And how does age affect fertility? And for women in India who are now looking at, say, options to freeze their eggs or enhance their fertility, what are the options available?
See, I'm not going to lie. Age does affect fertility, but it doesn't affect fertility the same way for everybody. So sort of if you go down to the science of it all, Indian genome, our eggs actually reach like age about 6 years faster than the Caucasian genome. So 25, 26 is actually peak fertility for Indian women compared to about 32 for Caucasian white women. And a lot of the fertility preservation studies, methods, body of evidence is built around understanding of the Caucasian women body. And Indian women also are predisposed to insulin resistance, diabetes. You know how everyone that we know has diabetes, right? So these kind of things actually affect your fertility by causing a phenomenon known as anovulation, which is the failure to ovulate or get your periods on time. So a lot of like in in India, a lot of younger women who are struggling to conceive, it's because of anovulation. A lot of it is because of anovulation, and that is not something that actually should be treated in the clinic. Um, and that's important to know, because sometimes if the behavior change is hard and like your doctors not necessarily like to study the Caucasian textbooks, right? They're not going to necessarily bring this up. They're going to give you medicines to ovulate and then figure out whether you can conceive up naturally after that, and then go through different procedures for IUI, IVF, everything if required. That is also, sometimes women don't want to wait. They want to have their children. So they're also okay with going through that procedure. So there's no right or wrong here. I think that for women who are older, um, with respect to like fertility preservation, that was your question, right? Like what to do with respect to fertility
Yes.
preservation. The truth is that your life is your life. I also did not conceive when I was 25, 26, peak fertility. It's not feasible, especially with professional journeys, professional careers, to think about it. And very often you decide to have a child a little bit later, right? When you're financially well settled and you're able to give that child the investment that the child deserves. And so in those circumstances, I think that it's important, if you know you want to have a family, to get your AMH levels tested, because that is a good indicator of your egg reserve. And it's a blood test, right? It tells you what's going on. So low AMH means low egg reserve. And if you're really interested in it, get a follicle count as well, anti-follicle count, which is something that your doctor can guide you to do. So you know what your situation is, right? Like how, like given your age, what is your biological age? That is something that you can figure out. That way you can actually plan your fertility. There are multiple options. There's egg freezing, there's embryo freezing. My evidence in this is not super updated, but I'm a biologist, and so when we were studying this, embryo freezing is more stable than egg freezing, just like from the biochemistry of it all. It's a little bit more stable, more amenable to storing in the cryo settings, basically. And so if you're married, then I guess embryo freezing is something that women do look at actively. And if you're not, or if you're more interested in egg freezing, then egg freezing is an option. Nowadays, the costs for this come down thanks to the popularity of it, and the technology has increased so much. Like the number of like viable, the retrieval, the egg retrieval process, the egg implantation process, all of that, the success rates have just gone up, gone up, gone up. So if you're interested in doing something like this, it's really important to shop options. Actually, like if you're interested in egg freezing, ask them to give you a tour of their cryopreservation facilities, that their lab, because that is what ultimately determines the quality of care that you're going to get. Like how good is the lab? Talk to other people who have gone through it, ask for references, and then only choose how you want to do what you want to do. I think that it's really important to like, I think the market is small, but it's growing.
Yeah.
And it's important to actually enable women to have more such options. There are some really good employers, especially in the US, and also actually cover the cost of egg freezing. And like thinking about options like that as the market grows in India is also very important.
You recently gave birth to a beautiful baby, and that must have been a very overwhelming and a very wholesome experience. Going through your maternity period, could you tell us the best piece of advice your gynecologist ever gave you?
Gosh, I think my gynecologist gave me amazing advice throughout. I went and delivered. My first child was also delivered by my same gynecologist. So I went to him for my second one also, just because it was amazing. I think um, what he said was pregnancy is a very natural thing that women go through. It's not a disability or a disease. It's your body is actually super strong during pregnancy. You're capable of doing a lot during pregnancy and after. So don't like treat your body like it's some disability or disease. Like you work out, you walk, you do whatever you need to do. If you've been lifting weights, you can continue to do that under supervision, right? Like don't be like, you see all those images of women holding their bellies and walking gingerly and all that. It is like, don't do that. I think that was amazing, because the kind of morale boost it gave me, where I was like, I can do anything in my pregnancy. It's true. I traveled alone a lot. I pitched to funders. I fundraised. I did all sorts of things during my pregnancy because मेरे दिमाग में कहीं था कि मेरी डॉक्टर ने बोला ये सब ठीक है. And I worked out, like till I delivered, I was working out. So I think all these things are important. The second thing was you're not eating for two. I think that was very important. He was like, this whole eating for two, chhod do. That's not true. You're eating only for yourself. So only on you the weight will be there. Eat healthy, balanced meals and proportions such that like maybe about 300 calories a day more is all that the baby needs. Eat proteinaceous meals, eat home cooked meals. Don't skimp and pinch on your nutrition and stop eating all these sugars. Like don't give in to your cravings. Eat healthy things. I think that also helped me a lot. Like it helped. I think it plays a huge role in the overall health of your baby and your recovery, postpartum, everything. So these were two like gems that my gynecologist sort of gave me, which really opened things up for me.
Yeah, I mean, this eating for two, we've been hearing it kab se, and you saying it, I was also like, wait, what?
Yeah, you only need 300 calories more a day. That's the crazy part.
That's a
But still, like your hormones are gonna make you crave
yeah,
things.
yeah.
There were days when I was just like, I only want motichur ki laddu. I did all that, but it was all in healthy moderation because
Yeah,
of the fact that I knew for a fact that I should not be eating for two.
right, right. Uh, with pregnancy, it's a lot of joy, it's a lot of happiness, but the mental and the physical challenges are also very real, which we don't want to like overlook. Could you tell us some common complications that women could go through during or after their pregnancy, which young women, whoever's watching this podcast, should be aware of?
So I think there are two very big things. Which so I mean, of course, I'm not a doctor. I'm talking more from public health literature, which is my specialty, right? Like what happens in the population, what can we see, which is very different from individual case to case procedures and operations that doctors go through. So some of the more typical complications and all, of course, they can talk better about, but I can really sort of talk about this from a community standpoint.
Sure.
What are we seeing in India? Two things: Indian women are anemic, and the rates of Indian women being anemic is actually more than 1 in 2. Or 1 in 3, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a very large number of women are actually anemic before they conceive. And to be sure that like if you're thinking of conceiving, talk to your doctor about testing for your iron levels and figuring out how to rectify that so you're not anemic. I was anemic. Like I'm a healthy woman. I'm well aware of things. I even eat red meat and stuff, but I was anemic. Right. So it's important to know that majority of Indian women are actually anemic, and the antenatal screenings test for that. They test for your iron levels. They figure out are you iron deficient or not, because from your second trimester onwards, you need to go on severe iron supplementation if that's the case. And it needs to be monitored. Your iron supplementation needs to be taken care of, because being anemic, there's a huge risk that if there is a complication, you may just bleed out, right? And you may require transfusions at that point of time. The volume, like your blood volume and stuff like that, increases a lot during your pregnancy. So it's important to recognize that there will be dilution that's happening. So much of nutrition is being fed to your baby from you, right? So dilution happens. So to make sure the mother's also healthy and the baby is also healthy, it's important to not be anemic. The second thing is gestational diabetes. It puts you at high risk of preterm labor and other complications like preeclampsia and stuff like that, which can be very risky. So ensuring that your blood sugar is under check is super important. Like this is something that my gynecologist was very, very, very particular about the entire time, because in India, we all have a predisposition towards diabetes, right? We're the diabetes capital of the world. And so making sure that there's no gestational diabetes is important. Eating right, eating healthy, exercising, and being like careful about your sugar intake through your pregnancy, and also knowing what your blood sugar levels are like is super, super important. I think these two things people don't really talk about. Of course, there are other things. So there's thyroid and other complications also, which can occur during and after pregnancy. So that's also something that doctors are careful about. They test your TSH levels. All these things happen. And like I told you earlier, the Indian public health system is amazing. This is protocolized. All these screenings are a part of regular antenatal visits. Like if you're in the smallest of villages to the best of hospitals, these things are checked for. And but if you're interested in conceiving, making sure that you're not anemic and also your folic acid levels are good is important. So
Got it.
that's important. Yeah.
Okay, great. Divya, just moving to your parents, you did speak about your mom's health. Would you mind sharing some experience on how do you care for your parents in some practical ways while keeping your busy life, while balancing that, and how do you support them and how do you look after their well-being?
So I am actually very lucky. I feel like my parents are very aware of a lot of health components because my father is also a biologist and a sports person. So he keeps our family fit. That's literally how I like to say it. Like he was the one who encouraged me to go into sports and working out and everything, and he keeps our family fit. But at the same time, parents in their 60s, you need to start really watching out for them and taking care of them. And I think that one way that, like, I'm privileged enough to have them live nearby, very close to us. And I think that one way that I do it is I try to keep a tab on sort of like what they're doing, how are they feeling, who's unwell, who's well, have you gone to the doctor, can I go to the doctor with you, can I arrange those visits. I think these are things that don't take a toll on your time but really help you, like enable that you're enabling your parents to become healthy. And also something that I'm like very proactive about with my mother and my father is their routines, right? Like the workout routine, walking routine, fitness routine, because that is what enables physical and mental acuity later on in your life. And so, blood sugar levels ko check karna, blood cholesterol levels ko check karna, CGM monitor lagana, all these kind of things are things that I'm really proactive about. And smart watches, right? They have a lot of good data tracking there. So to also get data from the smart watches and enable them to lead a healthy life is good. I think that finally, one thing I want to say, recently my parents got the shingles vaccine, which is something that is encouraged in older people. And I think, like, I have seen patients with shingles, and it's such a painful condition when you get it, you get an immunocompromised and you get shingles. Such a painful condition, and older people are more likely to get it.
Yeah.
So that's a very effective way to actually just nip it in the bud and like not suffer from shingles, and to get flu vaccines regularly. Like, so people say, flu shot se kuch hota nahi hai. The truth is, yes, it's not 100%, but it certainly does support your immunity. It prevents you from being completely knocked out. So do I also make sure that they get their flu shots done. So yeah.
Okay. So we are on to the last question.
Okay.
Podcast is called the Good Life Guide. So I
Yeah.
need one tip of the day for anyone who's seeking a good life for happiness and peace of mind.
Exercise. Just focus on moving your body every day. The amount, like, I'm surprised by how hard it is for me also to institute that as a part of my regime. But just doing that, it balances my hormones, it balances my mind, it enables me to have like a healthy musculature, reduces the risk of so many conditions like type 2 diabetes, cholesterol, everything happening, heart health is good. मतलब एक चीज से, right? Like, do that. That would be my good life guide.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Divya. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Dhira. Love it. Love being here.
It was a lot of fun. Now
Yeah.
I have something for you which I did not share pehle, जानबूझ के. So we
Okay.
do this rapid fire round.
Oh no.
Okay. And let me just take out the questions. Yes, here they are. Only 7 questions. Very easy.
Okay.
Okay. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. One health app that you use daily.
I use Pinky Promise.
Now go to comfort food.
Um, so it's curd rice and
Okay.
pickle. Like,
Okay.
South Indian curd rice and South Indian aam ka pickle.
Amazing. Best piece of health advice you've ever received.
Um, Put yourself first, and that's not selfish. Like, if you put your health first, it's not selfish. It actually enables everyone, your organization, your family, everybody.
Got it. Your go-to hack for stress relief.
I go on a run. Like that's, when my brain is completely fried, I just go on a run. My teammates also know this. They're like, okay, she's not picking up the call for 45 minutes. She's gone on a run. So that's what I do.
Okay, most important nutrients for women in their 20s.
Gosh, it's important to ensure that your iron and your calcium levels are balanced out. Also, like if you're facing period issues, like experiment with chioinositol, myoinositol, chiroinositol combinations. Interestingly, magnesium, vitamin D, B12, these are all very, very important. And really control your hormonal health and zinc. So yeah,
Okay. One myth about pregnancy you'd love to debunk. I know which one.
you're not eating for two.
Yes, that's the one. Most underrated health habit for women.
Tracking your periods. I think it's something that no one really talks about, but it just like when you do that, you understand things about yourself. You gotta just track your periods.
Got it. Thank you. That's it for the rapid fire round.
Thank you, Dhiral. It was such a
Thank you.
pleasure being
Yeah,
here, and
this
thanks
was
for having me.
amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.